Welcome to Midnight Index. Ever heard of a 1 million light-year wide circle just floating in deep space? Perfectly shaped, completely invisible to the naked eye, and no one knows what made it. Yeah, it's real. And it's just one of the things we're diving into tonight. From strange lights chasing travelers across the Australian Outback, to unexplained signals from space and sound waves humming in the deepest oceans. These aren't ghost stories. They're real mysteries still messing with scientists today. So if you're into the strange, the creepy, and the what the hell was that, you're in the right place. Now, let's flip through the index. 1. The Dark Watchers, California's Coastal Phantoms. If you're ever hiking alone in California's Santa Lucia Mountains and feel like you're being watched, you just might be. The locals call them the Dark Watchers, towering, shadowy humanoid figures that silently observe from ridgelines and cliffs, always out of reach. And they've been doing so for centuries. The earliest written accounts come from Spanish settlers in the 1700s. They translated local Chumash oral traditions describing mysterious mountain spirits, dark figures who would silently appear during twilight and dawn, watching from afar before fading into the landscape. These weren't ghost stories told for fun. They were taken seriously. And they haven't stopped appearing. The name Dark Watchers itself is believed to have been coined by early Californian ranchers and travelers. But the most well-known 20th century account? That belongs to John Steinbeck. Yes, that's Steinbeck, who briefly mentioned them in his short story collection Flight. He describes dark forms against the sky, motionless like sentinels that vanish when approached. Even his own son, Thomas Steinbeck, later claimed in interviews that he and a friend had seen a watcher themselves while hiking as teens. And they were so unsettled by the experience that they left the area immediately. Descriptions remain eerily consistent across decades. They're described as tall, between 7 and 10 feet, thin, cloaked figures, sometimes wearing brimmed hats. They stand utterly still, usually on distant peaks or ridges, just watching. No one has reported them moving. No one has gotten close. And if anyone tries, they disappear. So what are they? Paranormal researchers think they could be something otherworldly, spirits, interdimensional beings, or even some kind of sentient phenomenon tied to the land. Theories often point to the region's deep cultural and geological history. The Santa Lucia Mountains are old. Very old. And many places there remain remote and untouched. It's the perfect place for something to hide. Skeptics, however, propose a more psychological explanation, pareidolia, for instance, which is the brain's tendency to see human-like shapes where none exist. Or the Brocken specter, a known optical illusion where your shadow is cast onto mist or fog, often appearing giant and looming. That could explain sightings made at dusk or dawn, when lighting conditions can warp perception. Add in the isolation and silence of a mountain hike, and your mind can absolutely conjure figures from shadows. But that doesn't explain one very strange thing. People almost never report seeing them alone. Most Dark Watcher sightings come from pairs or groups of hikers, who all claim to see the same figure at the same time. Are they all falling for the same trick of light? Or is something else really there? There are no photos. No videos. And even though people have tried capturing them, the watchers seem to vanish the second they're noticed. That's another recurring detail. Once they're acknowledged, once you realize they're there, they simply disappear. That behavior has led to another theory. Are these beings only visible when you aren't looking for them? Is their existence somehow tied to our awareness? A kind of psychological quantum observer effect, where the act of perceiving them changes what they are? Some hikers have reported odd sensations just before spotting them, like nausea, sudden chills, or the sense that something was wrong with the air. Others claim animals with them began acting erratically. These details make the Dark Watchers feel more like a presence than a visual phenomenon. So are they ghosts? Guardians? Leftover echoes of an ancient people or place? Or just our own shadows, misunderstood? Whatever they are, their legend continues to grow. The Santa Lucia Mountains have become a hotbed for paranormal enthusiasts and curious hikers. But just as many locals want no part of them. Stories quietly circulate in the region, with an unspoken rule. If you see one, don't talk to it. Don't acknowledge it. Just keep walking. Because the Dark Watchers don't follow you home. Unless you give them a reason to. 2. The Wow signal, a message from the stars? It was August 15, 1977. Just another night at Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope. Until it wasn't. That evening, astronomer Jerry Amon was scanning through reams of radio data when he saw something strange. A 72-second burst of radio waves so strong, so precise, and so unexpected, that he circled it in red pen and scribbled one word in the margin. Wow. And just like that, the wow signal became one of the greatest cosmic mysteries of all time. A potential message from deep space. One we've never heard again. Here's what made it so compelling. The Big Ear telescope was conducting a search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, by listening for narrowband radio signals. These types of transmissions are unusual in nature. Natural radio emissions, like from pulsars, quasars, or interstellar gases, tend to be broadband and messy. But the wow signal? It was tight, focused, intentional. It came from the constellation Sagittarius, near the Chi Sagittarii star group. The signal had a frequency of 1420 MHz, which is exactly the frequency emitted by neutral hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. This is significant because many scientists believe that if aliens ever tried to make contact, they might use that frequency. Why hydrogen? Because it's universal. It's cosmic common ground. A sort of interstellar hello. And the duration? 72 seconds. That's the exact window the Big Ear telescope could observe one point in the sky due to Earth's rotation. So whatever sent the signal, it wasn't just a brief blip. It lasted precisely as long as it should have. Now, here's where it gets wild. They tried to find it again. Many times. But it never came back. The signal was never repeated, never observed again by any telescope on Earth. It was a one-hit wonder. Over the years, dozens of explanations have been proposed. Some say it was a passing comet emitting radio waves. Others think it may have been a military satellite or Earth-based interference. But these ideas have been repeatedly challenged. For example, comets don't emit such clean, narrowband signals. And military transmissions are usually tracked. Plus, the Big Ear had two horns that listened to slightly different spots in the sky. If it were Earth-based, both horns should have picked it up. In the wow signal's case, only one horn heard it. That suggests it came from out there. Let's talk signal strength. The recorded value was 30 times stronger than background noise. That's not static. That's not a glitch. That's deliberate. Even Amon himself, years later, admitted that if he had to bet money, he'd say it wasn't from Earth. But if it was extraterrestrial, why didn't we ever hear from them again? Was it a mistake? A leak from some alien experiment? Or a one-time signal meant for someone else entirely, and we just happened to catch it by accident? One particularly eerie theory suggests that we only caught the tail end of the signal, that maybe it had been transmitting long before we tuned in, and stopped just after we moved on. Like catching the last note of a cosmic voicemail. In 2012, an astronomer named Antonio Paris proposed the comet theory again, tying the signal to the then-unknown comet 266P/Christensen. He argued that hydrogen clouds around comets could generate similar radio signals. But other scientists quickly countered that the strength, timing, and clarity of the wow signal just didn't match what a comet could produce. The signal was too clean. Too narrow. To this day, no explanation fits perfectly. Every natural source has a flaw. Every man-made theory falls short. And extraterrestrial origin? That's still on the table. SETI scientists continue to scan the skies, hoping to hear it, or something like it, again. But so far, silence. The wow signal remains a cosmic riddle. A single message in a bottle, tossed across the vast ocean of space. Heard once, and never again. 3. The Blythe Intaglios, Arizona's desert giants. Imagine flying over the Arizona-California border and spotting something on the ground. Not a crop circle, but a series of massive human figures carved directly into the desert floor. We're talking up to 171 feet tall. Staring skyward, arms stretched out, immortalized in gravel and stone. Welcome to the mystery of the Blythe Intaglios, geoglyphs so huge they're practically invisible from the ground. Yet no one knows for sure who made them. Or why. Discovered officially in 1932 by pilot George Palmer during a routine flight near Blythe, California, these intaglios, meaning designs cut into the earth, remain among the largest known geoglyphs in North America. 6 major figures are spread across the desert, including human forms, animals, possibly representing mountain lions or snakes, and abstract spiral shapes. Each is made by scraping away the dark layer of rock and gravel to reveal lighter soil beneath. If this technique sounds familiar, it should. It mirrors the approach used in the more famous Nazca lines of Peru. But here's the twist. The Blythe Intaglios are older. Radiocarbon dating and archaeological analysis suggest they were created somewhere between 900 BCE and 1200 CE. That means they predate European contact by centuries, perhaps millennia. And despite their size and complexity, they weren't discovered by the modern world until the 20th century. So who made them? The best guesses point toward the Quechan and Mojave tribes, both of whom have deep spiritual connections to the area. In fact, oral traditions among the Quechan describe a giant being named Mustamho, a creator figure who gave humans their land and taught them how to live. Some believe one of the largest human figures is meant to represent him. These intaglios likely served as ceremonial spaces or vision quest markers. But there's one very peculiar thing. They're clearly meant to be viewed from above. So how could ancient creators visualize and execute designs of this scale without aerial assistance? It's a question archaeologists still wrestle with. Some theories propose the use of low hills and ground-based markers, like carefully spaced wooden stakes and twine grids. But again, that level of coordination and scale is astonishing for a time before drones, maps, or aircraft. It implies sophisticated planning and cultural significance. And that has led to more fringe theories. Alien enthusiasts often lump the Blythe Intaglios in with the Nazca lines, suggesting that both were created either for extraterrestrial observers or with their assistance. These ideas aren't widely accepted in academic circles. But they highlight how mysterious the site truly is. There's also speculation that these figures may have functioned like land-based sky charts or aligned with constellations, solstices, or planetary movements. If so, we're looking at an early form of astronomical earth art, designed not just to be seen, but to mean something. Unfortunately, many of the glyphs suffered damage before they were even protected. Before their importance was known, off-roaders and motorcyclists unwittingly drove over some of the designs. Today, the Bureau of Land Management has fenced off key areas and placed viewing platforms nearby. But the desert winds are constant, and erosion continues. These ancient works may one day fade back into the sand. One fascinating cultural note. The Blythe Intaglios are located near a portion of the Colorado River known for its ritual and mythological significance to many indigenous peoples. This strengthens the idea that these figures were part of larger spiritual practices, used for rituals, storytelling, or cosmic alignment. Here's something else eerie. No tools have ever been found at the site. No shards, no scaffolding, no campsites. Just the glyphs. Almost as if the artists came, created, and vanished. So we're left with enormous figures carved into the earth. Designs best seen from the sky. Constructed with unknown methods by people who left no physical trace. And whose meanings we can only guess at. Are they spiritual landmarks? Messages to the heavens? Or just forgotten art installations that outlasted even their own creators? Whatever they are. The Blythe Intaglios are a literal reminder that some mysteries are hidden in plain sight. All you have to do is look down. Or up. 4. Upsweep, the Pacific's eerie sonic pulse. If the ocean is Earth's final frontier, then sound is its language. And sometimes, that language doesn't make sense. One of the strangest underwater signals ever recorded is something scientists call upsweep. Not the upsweep. Not an upsweep. Just upsweep. A mysterious sound that pulses across the Pacific like a sonic heartbeat, deep, mechanical, rhythmic. And nobody knows where it's coming from. It was first detected in 1991 by the NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, using their underwater hydrophone array, originally set up during the Cold War to detect Soviet submarines. But instead of hostile engines, they picked up something far stranger. A series of upsweeping tones, rapid, rising frequency bursts, coming from deep beneath the central Pacific Ocean. The weirdest part? It's seasonal. Upsweep peaks in spring and fall. As if the ocean has a built-in rhythm. It's not constant, it pulses. Comes and goes. Always from roughly the same region, somewhere near Point Nemo. The most remote location in the ocean, So isolated it's often called the oceanic pole of inaccessibility. The source is still undetermined. Some suspect volcanic activity, as there are submarine volcanoes in the area. This would make Upsweep a kind of underwater tectonic song, gas releases, pressure shifts, or lava movement causing harmonic frequencies. But even that doesn't fully explain the signal. Volcanoes don't typically create long-range, consistent tonal patterns seasonally. Others believe Upsweep might be linked to changes in water temperature or salinity. Perhaps the thermal expansion of seafloor fissures creates these tones. But again, why only twice a year? Why that specific part of the ocean? And how can something echo across thousands of miles of ocean and still not be traceable to a precise source? Upsweep can be heard across the Pacific, literally from Alaska to New Zealand, using hydrophones spaced thousands of miles apart. That kind of travel distance implies incredible power. The sound is loud. But it's also low frequency, below the range of human hearing, so if you went diving there, you'd never know it was happening. Yet the animals might. Some researchers wonder if marine creatures, especially large ones like whales or deep-sea species, respond to Upsweep in ways we don't understand. It could be natural. Or, it could be communication. Now here's where it starts feeling like sci-fi. Some theorists propose that Upsweep could be an accidental broadcast from something artificial. Maybe even a relic, some kind of forgotten tech humming to itself deep below, triggered by geothermal cycles. Think about it. The ocean floor is littered with wreckage, artifacts, and deep-sea vents hot enough to power turbines. Is it that hard to imagine something alien to us is down there, reacting to the environment? But it gets even stranger. Upsweep isn't the only unexplained sound the ocean has produced. NOAA has also recorded signals like the bloop, the Julia, and the slowdown, each with its own quirks and unresolved origins. Some overlap in location. Others in pattern. Upsweep is the most enduring of them all. For over 30 years, it's been recurring. Like clockwork. But in recent years, the signal has weakened. The amplitude has dropped. Which raises a final unsettling possibility. Whatever caused Upsweep might be dying. Or powering down. So here's the question that keeps oceanographers awake at night. What makes a sound that big, that long-lasting, and that consistent, and then fades without explanation? Until we get a camera to the bottom of that trench. Or something else decides to speak a little louder. Upsweep will remain one of the Pacific's most haunting secrets. 5. The Lake Michigan Triangle, the Great Lakes' silent Bermuda. The Bermuda Triangle might hog the spotlight, but the Great Lakes have a dark zone of their own. A patch of water that has swallowed ships, planes, and people for over a century. Welcome to the Lake Michigan Triangle, a region so filled with disappearances and bizarre phenomena that some call it the Midwest's answer to the Bermuda Triangle. This triangle connects Ludington, Benton Harbor, and Manitowoc, forming a massive triangle over Lake Michigan's open waters. Here, navigation systems have gone haywire. Ships have vanished in clear weather. Planes have dropped off radar without a trace. And some wrecks are never found at all. One of the earliest and eeriest cases happened in 1891, when the schooner Thomas Hume set out to retrieve lumber across the lake. It was a routine job. Calm weather. Nothing unusual. But the ship vanished, completely and suddenly. No wreckage, no bodies, no floating cargo. It would be over a century before divers discovered the ship's remains, perfectly preserved, at the bottom of the lake. To this day, no one knows what happened. The hull showed no signs of collision or storm damage. Then there's the Flight 2501 mystery from 1950. A commercial plane en route from New York to Seattle crashed into Lake Michigan near Benton Harbor during a thunderstorm. The flight was carrying 58 people, at the time, the worst aviation disaster in U.S. history. What's disturbing isn't just that the plane crashed. It's that no wreckage was ever found. Only human remains and seat cushions washed up on shore. The rest of the aircraft vanished. Not even modern sonar and diving missions have located it. Here's where things get weird. In the days following the crash, a farmer miles away from the lake reported a strange fog and a low hum overhead. He claimed he saw a glowing, disc-shaped object in the sky, hovering before suddenly vanishing. Multiple residents also reported unusual radar activity that night, including fast-moving blips that defied known aircraft capabilities. Coincidence? Or something more? The triangle has racked up dozens more disappearances since then. In 1921, the ship Rosabelle was found capsized with no crew aboard, despite having been fully manned just hours earlier. The ship showed signs of a collision, but no other vessel reported damage. It's as if it hit something that wasn't there. So what's behind all this? Theories run the gamut. Some blame seismic activity beneath the lake. Rare but real, creating sudden updrafts, vortexes, or pressure bubbles that could destabilize boats and planes. Others believe magnetic anomalies are to blame. Compasses have been known to spin or freeze in parts of the triangle, making navigation unreliable. There's even talk of time slips or interdimensional rifts, fringe theories, but not entirely dismissed by those who've studied multiple triangle phenomena around the world. But perhaps the most chilling speculation came from divers exploring a shelf beneath the lake in the early 2000s. They found what appeared to be a stone structure, eerily similar to Stonehenge, complete with petroglyphs, including a carving of a mastodon. If authentic, it would suggest that ancient peoples considered this lake spiritually significant thousands of years ago. Why? And why in that exact triangle? The structure hasn't been widely publicized due to preservation concerns, but divers and archaeologists who've seen it confirm it's real. Another curious connection: witnesses across decades have described balls of light, or strange orbs, hovering over the water in this region. Sometimes, they zip across the lake at high speeds. Other times, they float slowly, as if observing. Their presence seems tied to both disappearances and the lake's electrical anomalies. Are these balls of light natural plasma? Or evidence of technology we don't understand? Some survivors have even claimed to feel disoriented, panicked, or electrically charged when passing through certain areas of the triangle, like something was interfering with them. Despite its haunting history, the Lake Michigan Triangle remains an active transportation zone. Ships cross it daily. Planes fly over it constantly. But for those who study anomalies and unexplained vanishings, it's a place where logic begins to fray. A patch of the Midwest that whispers, just loud enough to unsettle. That not all mysteries are buried in tropical oceans. 6. Odd radio circles, ORCs, deep space's perfect rings. In astronomy, strange often means beautiful. But sometimes, it also means terrifying. Enter odd radio circles, or ORCs, a brand new category of celestial object that looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. Vast, glowing rings, larger than entire galaxies. And we have no idea what they are. These circles were first discovered in 2019 by a team of astronomers using the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder, or ASCAP. While scanning the sky for radio waves, they spotted perfectly symmetrical, ring-shaped anomalies. Not stars. Not galaxies. Just circles. The team's reaction? We didn't expect them. They were too symmetrical, too large, and completely invisible in every spectrum except radio. You can't see them with a telescope. They don't emit visible light, infrared, X-rays, or ultraviolet. Only radio waves. It's as if something out there drew glowing halos across the universe, only visible if you're listening closely enough. At first, astronomers thought they might be imaging artifacts or glitches in the data. But further observations from completely separate radio telescopes confirmed it. These things are real. And massive. How massive? The average ORC is about 1 million light-years across. Far larger than the Milky Way. And yet, they're incredibly faint. Their scale is so large, and their signal so weak, that we almost didn't notice them at all. Now that we know what to look for, more are popping up. But they're still extremely rare, only a handful have been confirmed. So what causes them? That's the million light-year question. One theory suggests that ORCs are shockwaves created by massive cosmic events. Perhaps the merger of supermassive black holes or colossal explosions from quasars. The shockwave would radiate outward in all directions, forming a bubble that appears as a circle when viewed from Earth. But here's the weird part. There are no visible explosions. No energy spikes in the areas where ORCs have been found. Some ORCs do contain galaxies near their center, possibly the source of the shockwave, but others don't. Another hypothesis is that there's a new kind of radio galaxy, cosmic structures formed by jets of energy from active black holes. But again, ORCs don't match the usual signatures. No jets. No lobes. Just rings. Fringe theorists have, unsurprisingly, jumped in, calling ORCs alien megastructures, cosmic portals, or dimensional ruptures. These ideas are mostly speculative, but they tap into a real unease. We're seeing something we've never seen before, and we don't know what it means. Even their name, odd radio circles, is a placeholder. It's literally what scientists called them because they had no idea what else to say. These aren't new stars or strange planets. They're something entirely different. Here's a freaky thought. The reason ORCs are so hard to detect might be because they're common, just very far away and very quiet. Which means the universe could be filled with these massive structures, humming softly in radio frequencies. And we're only now beginning to tune in. And if they are the remnants of ancient black hole activity? What if we're seeing the echo of an event that happened billions of years ago? A kind of cosmic fossil, still glowing in the dark, long after the source is gone. What ORCs tell us is this. Space is still full of surprises. We haven't seen everything. Not even close. And sometimes, the biggest mysteries don't arrive with a bang. They show up as a quiet, glowing ring at the edge of everything we thought we understood. 7. The Min Lights, floating orbs of the Outback. Out in the lonely heart of Australia's outback, near the remote town of Blythe, Queensland, strange lights are said to roam the land. They're not headlights. Not campfires. Not hallucinations from dehydration. They are the Min Lights, floating, glowing orbs that appear without warning. And sometimes, without mercy. Locals say they chase people. Appear suddenly. Vanish just as fast. But never get close enough to touch. Witnesses describe them as hovering balls of light, ranging from white to greenish blue, drifting silently above the ground. They follow travelers, cars, and even animals. Sometimes one light. Sometimes many. And if you try to chase them, they retreat. But they never seem afraid. They're curious. Watchful. The name Min comes from a now abandoned hotel in the region, where some of the earliest modern sightings were reported in the early 1900s. But Aboriginal Australians have stories of the lights that go far back beyond that. Oral traditions describe ghost lights that roam the land, warning of danger or death. Some cultures consider them the spirits of ancestors, or even the eyes of the land itself, keeping watch over sacred places. In fact, many indigenous groups warn against following the lights, believing they can lure travelers astray, causing them to become lost, or worse. A kind of paranormal will-o'-the-wisp, guiding the curious straight into danger. From a scientific angle, the most common theory is optical illusion or atmospheric refraction. In extreme heat, light can bend across great distances, similar to a mirage. Headlights or campfires from miles away might appear to float or drift, even when the original source is hidden behind terrain. But here's the problem with that explanation. Min lights are often reported in pitch-black conditions, in areas with no roads, no other travelers, and no known light sources. Many sightings occur in cold weather, when mirages are less likely. And most compellingly, people describe the lights responding to them. Moving closer when approached. Darting away when chased. Staying just outside of reach. Not random behavior. Interactive behavior. In the 1980s, Australian neuroscientist Jack Pettigrew tried to test this. He witnessed the Min lights himself during a field study and proposed an explanation called Fata Morgana mirages, complex atmospheric layering that allows light to be bent over horizon-scale distances. In theory, the lights could be real sources from far away, warped into floating shapes. But again, this doesn't explain the movement, behavior, or proximity. Then there's the bioluminescence theory. Could a previously unknown organism be emitting light in the outback? It seems far-fetched. But so did glowing jellyfish once upon a time. Still, no physical evidence of such creatures has ever been recovered. UFO researchers are especially interested in Min lights. Some believe they're drones or probes, non-human in origin, sent to scan, observe, or interact. The light's erratic but intelligent-seeming motion lines up eerily well with modern descriptions of tic-tac UFOs, small, agile, and silent. Could they be connected? Curiously, the lights also seem territorial. While sightings have occurred in other parts of Australia, the majority are centered near Blythe. Some theorists suggest there's something specific about the land, magnetic anomalies, underground quartz, ley lines, that might help create or attract the lights. But none of this has been confirmed. And while most encounters are benign, just a light following a car or a camper, some stories carry a darker edge. Travelers have reported panic, confusion, and even hallucinations after seeing them. Some have gotten lost while trying to follow or escape the lights. Others claim the lights can induce paralysis, as if time slows down in their presence. Whether they're spiritual, natural, or something beyond our understanding, the Min Min lights remain a part of Australia's living folklore. Locals don't just talk about them. They believe in them. Some even post warning signs on rural roads. You are entering Min Min country. So if you find yourself driving through Bullia one night, and a silent orb starts trailing your car, just keep driving. Don't stop. Don't follow. And whatever you do, don't look back. 8. The Mokele-Mbembe, Africa's living dinosaur? Deep in the dense rainforests of the Congo River Basin, where few outsiders have ever dared to travel, whispers persist of a creature that seems ripped straight out of prehistory. Its name is Mokele-Mbembe, which means one who stops the flow of rivers in the Lingala language. And according to local lore, it might just be a living dinosaur. Described by villagers and hunters across generations, Mokele-Mbembe is said to be enormous, elephant-sized, with a long neck, a small head, and a massive tail. Most descriptions closely resemble a sauropod, those long-necked, long-tailed herbivores like Brachiosaurus or Apatosaurus. The catch? These dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. Or, did they? Reports of the creature go back hundreds of years, but it wasn't until the early 20th century that Western explorers began documenting them. In 1909, German explorer Karl Hagenbeck interviewed locals who spoke of a half-elephant, half-dragon beast that lived in remote swamps. He was intrigued enough to mention it in his autobiography, helping kick off a century-long cryptozoological obsession. Later expeditions, led by scientists, missionaries, and adventurers, gathered consistent stories from tribes across different regions. The creature was said to live in lakes, travel through rivers, and avoid human contact. Some stories even describe territorial behavior, including attacks on canoes and a particular hatred for hippos. In one tale, a group of hunters allegedly killed a Mokele-Mbembe and cooked it, only for the entire village to fall mysteriously ill or die afterward. Despite the intrigue, no physical evidence has ever been recovered. No bones. No droppings. No clear photos. Just eyewitness accounts and drawings based on interviews. Still, the descriptions have remained remarkably consistent across cultures and decades. In the 1980s and 1990s, several high-profile expeditions, including ones funded by National Geographic and Discovery Channel, attempted to find the creature. They came back empty-handed but didn't rule out its existence. Many concluded that the terrain was simply too hostile and too vast to properly search. The Congo Basin covers over 500,000 square miles of thick, swampy, largely unexplored wilderness. And there's precedent for strange megafauna hiding in plain sight. The okapi, for instance, an animal that looks like a cross between a zebra and a giraffe, was considered a myth by Europeans until 1901, when one was finally photographed. Locals had known about it all along. So the idea that a large creature might still exist, largely hidden, isn't completely absurd. Improbable? Sure. But not impossible. Some scientists argue that the Mokele-Mbembe legend could be a misidentified animal, like the Nile monitor lizard, which can grow over 6 feet long and swims well. Others think it could be a new species of semi-aquatic mammal, or even just a symbolic spirit animal whose description has taken on mythic proportions over time. But here's where it gets fascinating. When researchers showed local villagers illustrations of extinct dinosaurs, particularly sauropods, the response was immediate. That's Mokele-Mbembe. These weren't communities influenced by Hollywood or dinosaur museums. Their knowledge was oral, passed down through generations. How could they describe an extinct dinosaur with such specificity? If they hadn't seen it? Some believe Mokele-Mbembe sightings are echoes of ancient memory. Perhaps a remnant of once living creatures that survived extinction and slowly died out in isolation. Others think it's still there, hiding in the murky waters of Lake Tele or the Laikoala swamp, moving silently through the jungle, avoiding contact. There's even a religious angle. Some Western creationists have latched onto the legend as proof that dinosaurs and humans coexisted, attempting to use it as evidence against evolutionary timelines. Scientists have rejected these claims as ideological, not empirical. But ideology aside, the mystery remains. Indigenous cultures still report sightings. The Congolese government has declared parts of the region protected, not because of Mokele-Mbembe, but in part due to international attention surrounding the mystery. Even today, cryptozoologists and adventurers continue to plan expeditions, hoping to glimpse something impossible. Maybe it's just a story. A legend meant to explain the unknowable. Or maybe, buried deep within the jungle canopy, a creature from the age of dinosaurs is still walking the earth. And just doesn't want to be found. 9. The Baltic Sea Anomaly, UFO or underwater oddity? In June 2011, a team of Swedish treasure hunters known as the Ocean X Team was scanning the floor of the Baltic Sea, searching for sunken buoys or ancient wreckage. What they found instead looked like something out of the X-Files. A massive, disc-shaped structure nearly 200 feet in diameter, resting 300 feet below the surface. Round, geometric, and seemingly out of place. Dubbed the Baltic Sea Anomaly, the formation appeared on sonar as a sharply defined, almost artificial object, resembling a crashed spacecraft or even a giant version of the Millennium Falcon. Its shape was too symmetrical. Its edges too clean. And most bizarre of all? The sonar images showed what looked like drag marks, as if the object had slid across the seabed before stopping. Initial speculation exploded across the internet. UFO enthusiasts were convinced. This was a crashed alien spacecraft, buried in the icy waters of the North. Mainstream media picked up the story, pushing the mystery even further. And it only got weirder. When the Ocean X team tried to return for a closer inspection, their electronic equipment malfunctioned. Cameras and lights cut out. Communications failed. Sonar readings went haywire. According to them, it was as if the anomaly was emitting an electromagnetic field. Even more strangely, divers who approached the site reported feeling disoriented, suffering from strange sensations and anxiety. Samples taken from the anomaly revealed a composition of metals and stones that some geologists called unusual, though not entirely unnatural. Still, the shape, the drag marks, the interference. It didn't add up. Or did it? Skeptics quickly offered explanations. Some believe the anomaly is simply a glacial deposit, a remnant from the Ice Age, sculpted by slow-moving glaciers thousands of years ago. These processes can form unusually symmetrical rock formations, including plateaus and dome shapes. Others say the sonar images are misleading. Side-scan sonar often distorts shapes, especially on uneven terrain. What looks like a flying saucer could just be pareidolia, our brain spotting patterns in noise. But proponents of the anomaly theory aren't convinced. They argue that natural formations don't explain the electrical disturbances, the precise lines, or the fact that the anomaly reflects sonar differently than surrounding geology. Some believe it's a man-made object, possibly an ancient megalithic structure lost to time. Others think it could be a Nazi-era technology, sunk or hidden during World War II. But there's no record of anything being deployed or lost in that exact region. And then there are those who go full cosmic. Could it be a crashed alien craft, now fossilized by the sea? Some even tie the anomaly to ancient astronaut theories, claiming that the site may have been active long ago and is now dormant, hence the bizarre EM field. The idea is speculative, sure, but intriguing when paired with reports of strange sonar echoes and odd deep-sea lighting around the site. Oceanographers who visited the region continued to debate. Some say it's a natural rock outcrop, weathered in a particularly rare way. Others admit there's something off about it, something that doesn't quite fit with known geology. And due to limited funding, in-depth exploration hasn't been possible. The site is remote. The waters are rough. And many now think the Swedish team exaggerated their claims to gain publicity. Still, those interference reports? Never explained. In 2017, new scans revealed even more complexity beneath the surface, a series of steps or terrace layers below the main disk, as if the object is connected to something larger, hidden beneath the sediment. That's kept the mystery alive. Are we looking at a natural formation that looks artificial? Or something artificial that's been buried and aged into obscurity? Until better expeditions can revisit the site with advanced tech, the Baltic Sea Anomaly sits in limbo. A perfect circle of uncertainty at the bottom of a sea. With just enough strangeness to keep the world guessing. 10. The Bridgewater Triangle, Massachusetts' hidden zone of chaos. Massachusetts may be best known for its colonial past and Salem witches. But head south of Boston and you'll find a place where strangeness clusters like nowhere else in New England. It's called the Bridgewater Triangle, a 200-square-mile region infamous for UFOs, cryptids, cult activity, ghosts, and impossibly bizarre encounters. First coined by cryptozoologist Loren Coleman in the 1970s, the Bridgewater Triangle is bordered by the towns of Abington, Freetown, and Rehoboth. And almost every square foot of it has a story. Some spooky. Some violent. Some utterly unexplainable. Let's start with the Hockomock Swamp, which translates from Wampanoag as the place where spirits dwell. This massive wetland at the triangle's heart is ground zero for decades, possibly centuries, of reported paranormal activity. People have seen glowing orbs hovering over the swamp. Unmarked black helicopters flying low at night. Even phantom fires, blazes seen from a distance that vanish on approach. It's also home to reports of Bigfoot-like creatures, sometimes described as covered in red fur, standing 7 to 8 feet tall, and emitting terrible screeches. Then there are the Thunderbirds, massive winged creatures with wingspans estimated at over 12 feet. Witnesses describe them as reptilian, bird-like, and unnervingly intelligent. Some say they resemble prehistoric pterosaurs. Others compare them to mythic beasts from native folklore. But they're not just ancient stories, people have reported sightings as recently as the early 2000s. And let's not forget the Freetown Fall River State Forest, located within the triangle's southern edge. Beautiful during the day. Deeply unsettling at night. This area has long been associated with cult rituals, animal mutilations, and unsolved murders. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, law enforcement discovered several crime scenes in this forest linked to satanic practices, including sacrificed animals and symbols carved into trees. It's since become known as a paranormal and criminal hotspot, where even police officers admit they avoid going in alone after dark. And if you're into UFOs? The Triangle delivers. Dozens of sightings have occurred across the region. Witnesses have reported floating discs, triangular ships, and pulsing lights moving with impossible speed. In 1976, 2 teenage boys in Bridgewater claimed a cigar-shaped object hovered directly over them before vanishing without a sound. Even local news channels have occasionally covered clusters of sightings. Some claim the triangle sits atop a ley line intersection or geological fault that amplifies natural energies, drawing paranormal activity like a lightning rod. The ghost stories are just as plentiful. The Taunton State Hospital, now abandoned, was once a sprawling psychiatric facility with a long history of abuse and cruelty. Visitors have reported shadow figures in the halls, screams from empty rooms, and the sound of dragging chains. Rehoboth's Anawan Rock, a historical site tied to King Philip's War, is another haunted location, known for reports of phantom chanting, footsteps, and sudden cold spots. Unlike other triangle regions like Bermuda or Alaska, the Bridgewater Triangle isn't defined by a single mystery. It's defined by everything weird happening in one place. From ghostly hitchhikers on Route 44 to strange creatures that don't match any known species. It's a bizarre buffet of the paranormal. Critics argue that confirmation bias and folklore are at play, that once you call something a hotspot, people start seeing things. But even skeptics admit, the sheer volume and variety of reports coming from this small region is hard to ignore. Not to mention the consistency across decades. So what's going on in the Bridgewater Triangle? Is it a natural vortex? A psychic echo of ancient trauma? A magnet for the unexplained? Or simply a tangled tapestry of human fear, memory, and myth? Whatever the answer, one thing's for sure. This quiet corner of Massachusetts has more stories than it has streetlights. And if you ever find yourself driving through it at night, maybe keep your headlights on high. And don't stop for strangers. Thanks for flipping through the Midnight Index with us. From glowing orbs in the outback to eerie sounds beneath the sea, and rings in the sky to ghosts in the swamp. These are the mysteries that defy logic and challenge what we think we know. If you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks.